Hi everyone, welcome to this afternoon's GCSE History session on the My Tutor online school. Really good to see lots of you joining us again for this history session. Really excited to have you with us. It's going to be a session on the Spanish Armada, which is one of my favourite topics, so I'm really looking forward to it. And if you're new here, just to say that it will be roughly about an hour long. And we have 45 minutes for content delivery, so just for the tutor to teach you about the topic, and then there'll be lots of time for questions and stuff at the end as well. So you can send your questions through using the chat or using the Q&A function. But our history sessions are led by our tutor Yaz. If you don't know Yaz, then she studies international relations and modern history at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. So really looking forward to having her lead the session, and I'm going to hand over to her now to do that.
Hello everyone, welcome back. If you've been to a history session before, if you haven't, then welcome. Today we're going to be looking at Elizabeth and Spain, which is part of the Elizabethan England topic. This is specifically for the Edexcel exam board, but if you study AQA or OCR or any of the other ones, all of the content, so the main chunk of this is still going to be relevant, so stick around. Before we start, just a quick recap of what we did last time. So actually this is the wrong slide. What we did last time was the do you know what? I actually can't remember off the top of my head. Let me just go through my notes here. But there's all good stuff. So, oh no, this is, so last time we did, sorry about this, life in Elizabethan England, of course. So, a quick summary. More people were taught reading, writing and mathematics, thanks to the growth of trade, Protestantism and the printing press. More grammar schools opened to teach children from wealthy families. More people went to university during this period. The Elizabethan upper and lower classes had different pastimes and rarely mixed, except at the theatre. The theatre grew during the Elizabethan period, giving rise to playwrights like William Shakespeare. Population growth drove up rent and food prices and decreased wages. Bad harvests and enclosed land meant that less food was grown, driving up food costs. And as a result, more and more people fell into poverty, and the Elizabethan government were concerned that poverty would lead to rebellion, so they introduced the 1572 Vagabonds Act and the 1576 Poor Relief Act. Because it's on the slides, we'll just go through it as well because it's good revision for you guys. So this is the challenges to Elizabeth's rule, which we did 2 lessons ago, so again, sorry about that. So Elizabeth became queen in 1558 following the death of Mary Tudor. She was faced with issues of legitimacy and concerns about her unmarried status. Elizabeth proved to be a charismatic and intellectual leader. She could speak 6 languages. The Queen, advised by the Privy Council, was very powerful, although she could not pass laws or raise taxes without Parliament's permission. England had a population of around 2.8 million, roughly 10% lived in cities and towns, and 90% lived in the countryside. And Elizabeth inherited a country that was £300,000 in debt. Over her reign, she sold off crown lands and reduced her expenses to pay off the debt. And then the tensions between England and France were high at the beginning of the reign. She officially surrendered Calais to France to avoid war, and then tensions began to spring up with Spain. So this is where the Spanish Armada comes in. Today we're going to be looking at the rivalry between England and Spain, the Netherlands and Cadiz, the lead up to war, the Armada, and then the consequences of the Armada. So to kick it off today, we're going to be looking at rivalry. First up, political and religious rivalry. So by the 1580s, relations between England and Spain had reached the point of war. So the religious rivalry. Under Mary Tudor, the Spanish and the English were allies because she was married to the King of Spain. As a Protestant country under Elizabeth I, England's relationship with Spain soured. So Philip II, backed by the Pope, saw Protestantism as a threat to the authority of the Catholic Church, and many English Protestants saw Spain and Catholicism as a threat. So Philip of Spain became involved in Catholic plots against Elizabeth. So the Spanish policy in the Netherlands, another sort of sore contentious point between England and Spain. The Netherlands had been Spanish since the 1400s, but many Dutch became Protestant. The brutal Spanish campaign under the Duke of Alba aimed to restore Catholicism there, and Elizabeth's government decided secretly to help Dutch Protestants resist the Spanish. The Spanish Duke of Parma entered the Netherlands and restored Spanish control, and England's allies, who were William of Orange and the Duke of Alençon, were both killed. So I've got a quiz question for you here. Who was the leader of Spain in 1580? Who was the leader of Spain in 1580? If you can all put that in the chat, that would be excellent. We've got some answers already. So who was the leader of Spain in 1580? If you need a clue, he was a king. Who was the leader of Spain in 1580? Okay, if you don't know, don't worry. It was King Philip II. Jot that down if you didn't know it, because it's really important for what comes next with the rest of the Spanish Armada. Knowing who's the main players are is going to be really key. So if you get it right, well done. Now we'll move on to the commercial rivalry. So commercial means sort of like trade and money, if you didn't already know. So by the 1570s, England and Spain had emerged as trade rivals, competing for access to markets and resources of the New World. So that's the Americas, as well as to the markets of Turkey, Europe, Russia, China, and North Africa. So they've got a lot of rivalry going on in a lot of different places. This results in English hostility towards Spain. So Spain represented a major barrier to English trade. Spanish control of the Netherlands by the Scheldt and the Rhine estuaries closed off one of the principal trade routes used by English traders in Europe. So trade in Europe is reduced because they've got control of these estuaries. All trade in the New World had to be licensed by the Spanish government, which then limits the opportunities of English traders because they have to get licenses from Spain. And as we've already sort of established, Spain and England aren't on very good terms at the moment. And English traders' efforts to find ways of making money caused conflict with the Spanish government. So their trade rivalry becomes quite a major issue. And this leads to privateering. So privateering is sort of like piracy, so pirates, but they're not illegal, they are legal. So if you're a privateer, you're legal, but if you're a pirate, it's illegal. So English merchants raided the Spanish colonies and the ships coming back from the New World. In one raid alone in 1572, so Francis Drake, remember that name, captured £40,000 in Spanish silver, so that's quite a lot. And Elizabeth also encouraged Dutch rebels known as sea beggars to attack Spanish ships. So you've got Francis Drake, and you've also got the Dutch rebels, the sea beggars, attacking Spanish ships. So by 1580, the loss of silver meant that the Spanish government in the Netherlands went bankrupt, so they couldn't afford to pay their soldiers. So it's actually got quite big consequences, all of this privateering, on the Spanish government and on their economy generally. And it does actually lead to the collapse of the Spanish rule in the Netherlands economically. So this leads to deteriorating relations. Elizabeth, by knighting Drake, by making him a sir, demonstrated her hostility towards Spain's commercial interests in Europe and in the New World. Her actions showed that her support for the financial losses suffered by the Spanish government as a result of English privateering, so she's actively supporting them. And by encouraging Dutch rebels, Elizabeth also demonstrated her defiance of Spain. So for Philip II, privateers were little more than pirates who needed to be removed to protect Spain's commercial interests by war if necessary. And this is leading to a lot of friction politically, economically, and religiously between Spain and England at the time. So I've got another quiz question for you. In what ways did Spain try to limit English trade? In what ways did Spain try to limit English trade? This is actually quite a hard question, so don't worry if you can't do it, but I would like you to have a go. What ways did Spain try to limit English trade? You can think about how they tried to limit English trade in Europe and in the New World as well. So anything that you can come up with, and then we will have a look at the answer. So in what ways did Spain try to limit English trade? This is quite a hard question, so don't worry if you can't get it. Okay, so yes, they have blocked many trade routes. So England had a blockade of trade, yep. So England needed Spanish government to trade with the New World, yep, excellent. So the Scheldt and the Rhine estuaries were closed, and all New World trade had to be licensed through Spain. So this is two major barriers to the two major places that England are trading with, and that's a big issue for England, obviously. So this brings both countries close to war. By 1587, England and Spain are close to war. The Treaty of Joinville in 1584 united Catholic France and Spain against the Protestant Netherlands and England. So Philip II blamed English support of the Dutch rebels for making the situation in the Netherlands worse, and he blamed English privateers for attacks on Spanish shipping. He's quite angry with the English at the moment, and Elizabeth's government blamed Spain for a series of plots against Elizabeth. So Spain isn't blameless in this whole situation. So why are the Netherlands so important? You think that because it's just between Spain and England, that's who we're going to be focusing on, but the Netherlands were actually pivotal for the Spanish Armada. So the Netherlands were ruled by Spain, but the English saw the Netherlands as a vital place for trade. They've got Antwerp, which is one of the biggest cloth trading hubs, and that's one of the biggest industries in England at the time, so they really need to keep the Netherlands sort of on side. By 1572, Protestant ideas had spread in the Netherlands, and Protestant Dutch rebels began a campaign for independence from Catholic Spain. So this led to the Dutch revolt. King Philip of Spain then sent an army to defeat the rebels. Following the death of the Dutch rebel leader William of Orange, Elizabeth was approached to become Queen of the Dutch. She declined, but she sent an army to fight with the Dutch against Spain. So because both England and the Netherlands are Protestant, they thought they could unite under one queen, but Elizabeth doesn't want to do that. She just wants to help. She wants a Protestant ally. So throughout the 1590s, the Dutch then won several victories against the Spanish, and by 1609, after Elizabeth's death in 1601, the Dutch Protestants won control of Holland. So that's just a little bit of wider perspective for you. You won't be tested on anything after 1588, so don't worry. I just wanted to get that in so you know what eventually happens with the Dutch revolt. So the Netherlands and Cadiz. By 1585, April began to support Dutch rebels directly by sending troops to the Netherlands under Robert Dudley, who was the Earl of Leicester. Francis Drake continued to attack the Spanish shipping, and he also raided the Spanish fleet at Cadiz. So, background to the war with Spain. England signed the Treaty of Nonsuch in August 1585 with the Dutch Protestant rebels. They've just signed a treaty with the Dutch, someone who is actively in war against the Spanish. And by the terms of the treaty, England would pay for an army of 7,400 English soldiers led by an English commander, Robert Dudley, to help out with the Dutch revolt. So, the campaign in the Netherlands. Dudley hoped to remove the Spanish from the Netherlands altogether. However, Elizabeth still hoped to negotiate with Spain. She doesn't want to go to war with Spain. She's seen how wars can be costly following the reign of her sister and the devastating war with France that got England into debt in the first place. And she wants to avoid it as much as possible. So she only gave Dudley a limited force, which was capable of very little. And Dudley was unable to defeat the Duke of Parma's Spanish forces, but he did manage to stop the Spanish from capturing Ostend, which is a deep water port on the English Channel. Deep water ports are important because some of the trading vessels are quite big, like under the water. So you need deep water to be able to trade appropriately and have places for them to go. Just to give you some background there. And this meant that the Spanish Armada was unable to link up with the Duke of Parma's forces in 1588. So someone's just said, of the era were the Dutch a staunch ally towards England? They were religious allies and they traded quite a lot. I wouldn't say that they were staunch allies in terms of Europe at the time. All of the countries are sort of looking out for themselves, looking out for number one. So they've always got their own interests at heart. But the Netherlands and England do, they are quite close throughout this whole period of history. If you go on to study it later, you'll find out about the Glorious Revolution, which is where William and Mary come over from the Netherlands. But it's, so they are quite close allies, but they're not, I won't say they were staunch allies, and they are only doing it for their own benefit, if that makes sense. So Drake's attack, this is called the singeing the King of Spain's beard, because they basically just come really close to actually getting the King of Spain. It's sort of like a warning shot. So since January 1586, Spain had been gradually building up its armada. Philip II's enormous invasion fleet, which comes on later on. In March 1587, Elizabeth ordered Francis Drake to attack the Spanish navy between the 19th and the 22nd of April. He then attacked Cadiz, and which was a major Spanish naval port, just for context, and he destroyed 30 ships and much of the fleet's supplies. So the attack then delayed the construction of the Armada by a year, and that's really important. So they've delayed the construction of this massive invasion fleet, and this gives England more time to prepare for the Spanish invasion. And then Drake continued to attack Spanish coastal ports and treasure ships, which continues just to sort of deplete the Spanish morale and also their sort of economic situation. So, who led English troops in the Netherlands? Who was the person that led English troops in the Netherlands? This might seem a bit obscure, but it's good for you to know all of the names of all of the people, because if you're able to put them in, that just really helps with your exam answers for showing that you've got specific subject knowledge. That's good. We've got a range of answers, actually. So the correct answer was Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. Some of you have put some other answers like Francis Drake and Elizabeth, and that's really good for showing just there's a lot of names going on with the Spanish Armada. So when we come to revision tips, that's one of the things I talk about. You need to make sure you know who's who, because there's a lot of people hanging around in this period and it's easy to get confused. So well done if you got that right. If you didn't, jot it down, and don't worry, because it is very confusing name-wise. So the causes of war. There are a couple of main causes. So first up, religious differences. Spain was a Catholic country and England was a Protestant country, meaning that the two rulers had conflicting spiritual outlooks. So that's one thing that's going to cause tension the whole time. Marriage rejection. King Philip of Spain had been married to Elizabeth's sister, Mary Tudor, and then when Mary died, he offered to marry Elizabeth, but she rejected him. So hurt pride. Piracy, so English sailors like Hawkins and Drake attacked and stole treasure from Spanish ships in the New World. King Philip was furious, but Elizabeth encouraged and rewarded adventurers. I've called this piracy because that's what King Philip called it, and that's why it's one of the causes, because he sees them as pirates. The Civil War in France. So France was the traditional enemy of both England and Spain, meaning that they united together against the country. So England and Spain would unite against France. But now that France was in a civil war, it was preoccupied with its own issues and it no longer posed a threat. So the alliance between Spain and England was no longer necessary. They broke apart, and then all of these tensions began to sort of bubble up to the surface. So Spain also supported Catholic plots. There was a lot of evidence that Spanish support of plots to restore Catholicism to England, particularly involving Queen Mary, Queen of Scots, to the throne and get Elizabeth off. So we've got another lesson on the plots and revolts, and we'll go into that more, but they were very key to all of those plots, which are a direct threat to Elizabeth. We've also got the Dutch revolt. So Protestants in the Netherlands began a revolt against the Spanish rule in 1572, just a reminder, and Elizabeth secretly supported the Dutch rebels because she knew that the Dutch revolt would keep the Spanish too busy to threaten England, and also she wanted a Protestant ally. And finally, Elizabeth's army joined the Dutch rebels. So Elizabeth sent an army under Robert Dudley to fight the rebels. The Dutch rebels helped them fight Spain. There we go. So for the first time, the English and Spanish armies were actually directly fighting each other. So this is where you get the beginning, the sort of seeds of the actual war. So I've got another quiz question. Who was Elizabeth's most prominent privateer? Who was Elizabeth's most prominent privateer? Excellent, so we've got some answers coming in. He's also called a pirate by King Philip II of Spain. Excellent. So you should have got Sir Francis Drake. If you didn't, jot it down, because again, it's another key name to be able to put into all of your answers. And most people remember Elizabeth, King Philip of Spain, and then maybe Robert Dudley, but they don't really remember Francis Drake. So if you can get that in, that's like another excellent point in your favour when you're in the exam. So what were the differences between Spain and England? There are a lot, so I've put them into a table. So if you watch this back or whatever, you can copy this table, screenshot it, do what you want, just because I found it was the easiest format. So commanders, we'll go through Spain and England for each one. So in Spain, you had the Duke of Medina Sidonia, and he had little experience of sailing. He was not very experienced at all for naval warfare, whereas England had Lord Howard of Effingham, who had little experience of fighting at sea, but Drake and Hawkins were both very experienced, and they were very high up in the Armada and the sort of planning of it and the execution. So even though both of the dukes in charge of the naval forces weren't very experienced, England had the advantage of having Hawkins and Drake. The fleet. So the Spanish fleet was 130 ships. Remember that for later on. They had 64 battleships, 22 large galleons, and 45 converted merchant ships. You don't need to know in that much detail. The main thing you need to know is that they had 130 ships. But just thought I'd give it to you anyway, because if you can remember it, that's going to look excellent in the exam. The English, on the other hand, had 200 ships. They had 54 strong, light and fast battleships and 140 converted merchant ships. So they're in a much stronger position. Navy-wise, they've got a much bigger army, and part of that comes to the fact that Drake prevented the construction of the Armada on his attack on Cadiz. And finally, sailors and soldiers. The Spanish had 30,000 men on board the fleet and 20,000 men on land, and the English had 14,000 men on board the fleet and 20,000 soldiers on land. So there's a big disparity there. You think that England's going to be at a disadvantage because of that, but as we'll see when we come to the end, they weren't really. But figures wise, that does look like a bit of a disadvantage. So the next part of the table, don't worry, this is the second half. The food supplies. So for the Spanish, it was not fresh. They had 6 months worth of supplies which were stored on the ships. This is going to be in rations. It's going to be like dry crackers. It's not very nourishing food. So they're running on a much poorer diet than the English are, who are being supplied fresh food daily. And that's because they're fighting on their home turf, basically. They're just fighting off in the English Channel, which is obviously next to England. So they're in a much better position food-wise. Weapons-wise, the Spanish had 2,000 large cannons, which could fire heavy cannonballs, but only over a short distance, and they were slow to load. So although they've got more cannons and they're bigger, they're less effective overall because they're slower and they're heavier and they don't go as far. Whereas the English have got 200 smaller cannons which could fire over a long distance and were quick to load, which means that they don't have to get as close to do any damage, and also they can fire more rapidly. So that puts them at a massive advantage, as we'll see when we get into the actual Armada. Tactics for fighting at sea. So the Spanish tactic was get close so men could board and capture the enemy ships, but the English tactic was destroy enemy ships by firing cannons at them from a distance, and therefore not letting the Spanish get close enough to board their ships, which is quite effective, as we'll see. And then finally, the annual income. So for Spain, it's 3 million, but for England, it's only 300,000. So a massive disparity there. Parliament didn't grant Elizabeth the taxes to top this up. As I actually said in the summary earlier, Elizabeth has no control over raising taxes and passing laws. So she has to get that through Parliament. And if Parliament say no, she can't do it herself. So she's in a bit of a rut there. But eventually, as we'll see, this doesn't have much of a difference. It just proves that even with that massive disadvantage financially, England are still able to pull it off and defend themselves. So Philip II's strategy. The Armada had 130 ships and 2,431 guns. They would all sail along the English Channel to the Netherlands. This is part one. Part two, from there, the ships would join forces with 20,000 troops to Kent, which is one of the counties just southeast of London in England. The Spanish army would then attack London, end Elizabeth's reign, and establish a new Catholic government. For the invasion to succeed, they needed control of the English Channel so that they could transport Palmer's troops to England, and therefore it was vital that the English Navy disrupt the Spanish ships to stop them landing their army. That was a key part of England's defence. So, quiz question, how many ships did Spain have? How many ships did Spain have? Hopefully you still get this. And again, this is a really good thing to put in all of your answers. It's an excellent little fact, little statistic to get in there and just prove that you really know your stuff about the Spanish Armada. Excellent. So we've got some answers coming in, all correct so far. It should have been 130 ships. So well done if you got that. If you didn't, jot it down. Okay, so the Armada. What actually happened? So the Armada leaves Lisbon on the 28th of May 1588. It's then delayed by storms and repairs and finally sets sail for England on the 21st of July. The Armada is sighted by the English off Lizard Point in Cornwall. The warning beacons are then lit along the English coastline, and that lets Elizabeth and everyone in London know that the Armada has been sighted. The Armada continues through the English Channel, now chased by English ships, but suffers little damage. So the Armada anchors near Calais, where more troops are meant to join, led by the Duke of Parma, but the English send burning fire ships into the fleet. The Spanish ships panic and are scattered out of formation, and formation was a very key part of the Armada. That's how they were going to defeat England, is through this formation, but they're scattered out of formation by these fire ships. The Spanish ships are blown towards dangerous sandbanks in the Channel, and the English attack again in the second part of the Battle of Gravelines. This time they battle at close range and significant damage is inflicted onto the Spanish fleet. So I should just clear this up. The Battle of Gravelines is the fire ships going in when they dock at Calais, and then also the close range after the sort of close range warfare between them after they're blown onto the sandbanks. The English then use fire ships again to great effect. Fire ships, just for clarification, are boats loaded with gunpowder, which are then set on fire and directed towards the enemy. They don't have any people on them, but they're just sort of set alight and sent on their way. The Armada is then, as a result of the fire ships and all of the fighting, forced north around the east coast of England, and the English fleet turn back after food and ammunition supplies run low, and the Armada sets sail for home, but they're forced around Scotland and Ireland. So that's a pretty massive detour, and many ships are wrecked in storms and thousands of sailors drown, which is quite sad, obviously. So the surviving Spanish ships arrive back in Spain. Almost half of their fleet is lost, so massive damage, and England win. So in which battle were the fire ships used? Which battle were fire ships used? Some of you have gone into a lot of detail. If you're doing this in an exam, don't worry, just include the one that I've already mentioned, because they're not going to be looking for that much detail, and if you remember all of them, you might get confused. So excellent. The answer was the Battle of Gravelines. Jot that down if you didn't know it. If you did, well done. Just because that's a really good thing to get into an answer to show specific detailed knowledge. So what factors led to England's victory? First up, leaders. The Duke of Medina Sidonia led the Spanish fleet, but he was inexperienced in naval battle and made fatal errors in his planning and his tactics. For example, the sort of pivotal point of Spain's tactics was this formation, which was then scattered by the fire ships, and he didn't have the flexibility to cope with that. Whereas the English had an equally inexperienced leader, but they also had Drake and Hawkins to help. Planning. The strength of the Spanish fleet came from its crescent formation plan, so that's like a crescent moon. But when the English broke this up with their fire ships, the Spanish became vulnerable and exposed to attack. That sort of links in with the other point that we just made. They didn't plan it very well, basically. No reinforcements. The Spanish plan relied on stopping and picking up the Duke of Parma's army to boost their numbers, but the fleet was unable to anchor, so they never picked them up. This meant that they were fighting with men down, basically, and they weren't able to do that successfully. Tactics. Spanish tactics were to get close enough to the English ships to board them, whereas the English tactic was to attack from a safe distance. So obviously, if you've got one side who's avoiding getting close and the other side trying to get close, it's never going to work for the one that's trying to get close. And it seems like common sense, but staying as far away from possible from your enemy seems to have worked quite well for England in this case. So a failure of tactics. The ships. So the Spanish ships were slower and less equipped for bad weather than the English ships. You've got to remember that for the English, one of the places that they train is the English Channel. That's their home ground. They know what they're doing there. They've done practice manoeuvres and everything out there. So they really know what they're doing in this terrain. They're used to the stormy weather. Whereas for Spain, they're used to practicing all of their manoeuvres and stuff in different climates and different bits of the sea. So they're fighting in foreign territory and England are fighting in their home territory. It's sort of like a football match where teams tend to do better when they're playing at home. England have done better because they really know what they're doing. They've got the support of the people behind them and they're much closer to home, so they can get better food, better ammunition, and they just know what they're doing. They know where all the sandbanks are. They know the English Channel really well, basically. So that's another factor. Weapons. The English ships had cannons that they could fire at a safe distance and could be reloaded quickly. The design of the Spanish cannon meant that they could only fire over a short distance and they were slow to reload, which is what I've said before, but just a reminder because that's really important. Support. So the Spanish overestimated the level of support there would be for England, be in England for Spanish control and a return to Roman Catholicism. So basically they thought that a lot of people would be very happy with the idea of the Spanish coming in, overtaking England and then reinstating Catholicism. But most people, as we've said in the religious settlement lesson, either don't really care about religion, they just go with the flow, do what they need to make sure that they're not burnt, and they're just getting by practicing however the state tells them to, and the people that are outspoken tend to be in the minority. So the Spanish looked at all the people who were being outspoken and thought, oh yeah, no, the English are on board with returning to Roman Catholicism. But then when it came to it and the English said, actually, I think we'll stick with Elizabeth, that sort of skewed their plans a little bit. And then finally, this one seems a bit like a rogue one, but it's actually really important. The weather. So the lack of a secure port where the Spanish could take shelter meant that they were buffeted by the wind. There were storms, which is quite damaging for ships, and they had nowhere to take refuge. So the thinking was, as a result of this, that God had intervened, and the windy weather and the storms was a sign that God was on Elizabeth's side. They were on the Protestant side, and the Catholics were wrong to invade. So that massively decreases morale amongst the Spanish soldiers in the Spanish fleet, and that has quite catastrophic consequences. And then when they're forced around the north of Britain and they have to There's massive storms when they go around Scotland and Ireland. That's another factor that sort of tells them that God was on Elizabeth's side, because of all of the suffering with only just over half of the fleet coming back. So it's massively demoralizing for the Spanish and sort of moralizing for the English, who think, oh yeah, God's on our side, God's a Protestant. So what were the consequences of the English victory? The Anglo-Dutch alliance was strengthened, so Protestantism in the Netherlands survived and strengthened the Protestant cause in Europe, which is good from a religious point of view. The defeat of the Armada showed the strength of the English Navy. It's sort of the English Navy's debut. It also encouraged English merchants to trade with Europe and boosted English confidence to explore. They've just proven that they've got a navy that can take on one of the biggest navies in Europe. They can take on Spain. So more merchants are keen to get boats out, and more explorers are keen to start exploring the New World and rivaling Spain on the high seas. The Queen took centre stage at a victory parade in London. Elizabeth was able to portray herself as a military victor, so this is big for her. Previously, she's been able to show herself as someone who can walk the middle line. She's quite good at keeping warring factions together, and now she's proven that she's also a military leader. She's not just good at sorting out little disputes between religious people and sorting out other illegitimacy claims and marriage proposals, but she can also, she's proved her sort of worth as a man when it comes down to it, because she can do military victory as well. So that's really good. That's a feather in her cap, because people don't think that women can do that, especially after Queen Mary, where she messed it up in France. So that's really good for her as a queen and her position. The war with Spain was far from over, but the destruction of the Armada was a major military and financial setback for the Spanish. So that makes England safe for a little while. They haven't got to fear Spain for a while because they're just recovering. And the victory of the English sort of underdog suggested that God was on the Protestant side, and that increases the support for Protestantism both within England and in Europe as well. So that's another good point for Elizabeth as a Protestant. So why was weather important in the English victory? Why was weather important for the English victory? It doesn't seem like a very obvious thing. Most people think of strategy and weapons when it comes to war, but why was weather important in the English victory? What effect does it have on the Navy, and what effect does it have on morale? Why was weather important in the English victory? Hopefully this isn't too hard, but I know that it's a bit of a rogue question, so if you're struggling with that, don't worry. So we've got some answers coming in. This one's from Ella. Because the bad weather and storms destroyed some Spanish ships, and it suggested that God was on the Protestant side, which would have decreased the Spanish morale. Excellent. And then from Summer, the weather suggested that it was a sign from God that he was the English Protestant sign. Excellent. The Spanish ships got battered. Excellent. As the weather was pretty unfamiliar with Spain, the original plans will have been significantly stunted, and so as compared to the English, the place where they trained all along would be great for me with the sea. Excellent. So 3 brilliant points made there. First up, destroyed the Spanish ships. Excellent. Second, it's a sign from God that he's on the Protestant side. It decreases Spanish morale. Excellent point. And then finally, the fact that the English are used to the storms, the weather, the sea in the English Channel is another reason that they're able to succeed. So well done, guys. Excellent points. I think you actually got more than me there. So I wrote that the storm blew away the boats, and people thought that it meant that God was on Elizabeth's side. So if you got that, well done. If you didn't, jot it down, because that's really important for when you get the 12 marker and 16 mark questions where they're going to ask you to explain and evaluate. That's a really good point to get in. So we're just going to go through a summary of what we've done today. So Spain saw English Protestantism as a threat to the authority of the Catholic Church. Spain's treatment of the Protestants in the Netherlands led to England supporting the Dutch rebels. Spain's control over the Netherlands and the New World damaged England's trading power. English privateers such as Francis Drake consistently raided Spanish colonies. The distribution of one another's disruption even of one another's commercial interests for further deteriorated relations between England and Spain. The English campaign in the Netherlands had a limited effect on Spanish control. Drake's attack on Cadiz delayed the development of the Spanish Armada. If there's one thing that you remember from this that's going to give you extra marks in any exam question, it's that point, that the attack on Cadiz delayed the development of the Spanish Armada. Basically, everyone forgets that. So if you can put that in, that's a massive tick in your favour. The King of Spain launched the Armada due to a mix of religious, political and commercial reasons. The Spanish needed to link up with troops in the Netherlands to launch a successful ground invasion of England. The war with the Spanish began in July 1588. The English successfully prevented the Spanish forces from joining up with the Duke of Parma's army, and the English defeated the Armada through a mix of advanced technology, better tactics and luck with the weather, and so the English victory set up England's reputation as a naval power. That's just a quick summary. So this is an example of an exam question. This is a 12-mark question, and it's asking you to explain the causes of the Spanish Armada using the following in your answer. So religious differences and the Dutch revolt. You can use information of your own. Just because we're running tight on time, could you just come up with some other points that you can include? So what would you use from your own information to supplement this answer? So for a 12-marker, you absolutely need to have a third point, and that's how you're going to gain all your marks, is to get a third point. So as well as writing about religious differences in the Dutch revolt, you will also need to talk about another cause of the Spanish Armada. So if you can all have a little think now of causes of the Spanish Armada apart from religious differences in the Dutch revolt that you would include and put them into the chat, that would be excellent. So for the Spanish topic, they love the Spanish Armada. It doesn't come up on every exam, not every topic does, but it is quite common. They do like it quite a lot. You could get 4-mark questions, 12-mark questions like this one, or 16-mark questions. Overall, they tend to be 12-mark questions more than anything else, but don't expect a 12-mark question and then you might get a 16-mark question, so prepare for all of them. The key things to think about, I would say, when you're revising are the causes and the consequences of the Spanish Armada. They're the key ones, really. So some of you have started to put in your answers. For a 12-mark question, you don't need to come to a judgment. You don't need to evaluate. You just analyse and explain using your subject knowledge. To get a level 4, which is the highest level, you must include the additional point, which is why I've asked you all to think of one now. It's just the easiest way to do well in one of these questions is to make sure that you're talking about 3 points, so an additional point to the one that's already mentioned. So things that you could have included are marriage rejection, piracy, the civil war in France, Spain supported Catholic plots, and Elizabeth's army joined the Dutch rebels. Another thing you could also talk about actually is trade rivalry, so that's the commercial rivalry as well. So well done if you got those. Summer's just said Spain supported the Catholic plot against Protestant Queen Elizabeth. Philip II proposed marriage to Queen Elizabeth, but she refused. So yes, 2 excellent points there. You've got the plots and the refused marriage proposal. Excellent points there. So well done if you got those. If you didn't, make a note of them now. I've actually got a example answer here from one of my students, and this is what she said. So we'll just have a quick look at that and see where she gained her marks, because this is a very good answer. So the trade rivalry between England and Spain was a significant cause of the Spanish Armada. All New World exports had to go through the Spanish ports, which reduced England's imports from the New World and angered them. Spelling mistake there, but anyway. The New World silver was key to Spanish economy, so privateering of Spanish ships by English sailors such as Sir Francis Drake, who in 1572 gained £40,000 in silver, in Spanish silver, and in 1577 to 80 got 400,000 while circumnavigating the world, was a drain on the Spanish economy and sparked hatred towards England. In addition, the English were trying to win land off the Spanish, increasing the tension between the countries, and they were racing to beat each other to new markets in North Africa and Asia. So this is a really detailed answer. This is a level 4 answer for this point, for trade rivalry. She's put her point, first of all, which is rivalry between Spain and England was a significant cause of the Spanish Armada, her point. She's given her explanation. She's given about 3 explanations, actually. So all New World exports had to go through Spain. New World silver was key to Spanish economy, so privateering had an effect. And then the trade rivalry between them winning off land and also entering new markets. So that's 3 really good explanations. She's given 2 bits of evidence. So in 1572, they gained for 40,000, and in 1577 to 80 they got 400,000. The only thing she actually hasn't done is linked it back to the question. So to improve this answer, this would have got maybe 3 out of 4 for this paragraph. She could have just linked it back to the question. So just saying something like, therefore, trade rivalry was a big cause of the Spanish Armada, just to sort of sum it up, link it back to the question, show the examiner that you're focused. But all in all, that was a good answer. So we've got another answer here from one of you, which we'll just have a quick look through before we look at some revision tips. So the commercial, religious and political differences had a big effect on the inauguration of the Spanish Armada. Due to political differences between England and Spain, it was clear that Spain needed to go to war. To make matters worse, privateers, supported by the English, also held ground for the Armada. Excellent. So you've got 3 excellent points there. I know this wasn't a paragraph answer, but those are just excellent points to include, and I just wanted to highlight that and say well done. So those are some good answers. Hopefully now you have an idea for how to answer a question like this one. So now we'll have a look at some revision tips. So I would recommend making a cheat sheet with all of the key dates, names, facts and figures. This is really important for this topic. You've got a lot of dates, you've got a lot of figures, and you've got a lot of names, as we've seen as we've gone through. So making sure that you know who's who is going to be really key for making sure you can get your head around the Spanish Armada, because it can be quite difficult sometimes. Make a timeline so you can revise all of the events of the Armada. It brews for quite a long time, so you want to know what's happening when. So you need to include things like the Dutch revolt, the attack on Cadiz, the days that the Armada was leaving Lisbon, when it finally entered the English Channel, things like that. Like making sure you know clearly what happens when is going to be really important as well, for making sure you get your head around this. Make bubble maps or linear notes, depending on what works for you. I just prefer bubble maps. On the causes of war, differences between Spain and England, causes of England's victory and the consequences of England's victory. And finally, practice using past paper questions. Either make model answers or do timed assessments to make sure that you are more comfortable with the exam format. So that when you get in there, you know what you're doing. And that is it for revision tips. So, do we have any questions today about the Spanish Armada? I know it's quite a big topic and we've sort of gone through a whistle-stop tour, so you might have some confusion, but if you've got any questions, shoot now.
I'm just having a look at the Q&A to see if there's any questions. Someone has asked, is this going to go on the My Tutor website? So all of the sessions are recorded, but they don't go on the My Tutor website. They get linked out to our channel on YouTube. So if you've joined up to the My Tutor online school and signed up, then you will get an email that directly links you out to this session on YouTube, and you can watch it there. Alternatively, you can go to the My Tutor channel on YouTube and find it, and it will be uploaded by the end of today. And some questions for you, Yaz. We have someone asking, what is a privateer?
Okay, so a privateer is, it's hard to explain because it's very similar to a pirate, but it's sort of the more legal version. So a privateer is it's an independent person, so a private person who's got their own ship, and they are authorised by a country's government by letters to attack foreign shipping. So they do the work of pirates, they're attacking ships and they're stealing treasure, but they are sort of allowed to do it by their government. So they're not part of the government, they're an independent person, they're not a representative of Queen Elizabeth. It's just that she's sanctioning it, she's allowing them to go out and do it. She's not gonna, when they come home, she's not gonna persecute them at all. She's sort of pat on the back, really, in reality. So it's a private person, so not a state official, who goes out and plunders ships, basically. So that's why King Philip calls them pirates, because they are sort of doing pirates' work, but they are allowed to do it. They've been sanctioned to do it by their government. So it's a very fine line, but that's the difference. I hope that makes sense. Are there any other questions at all?
Can you go back to the question page, please?
The question page.
And then we've also had someone just ask, when did the Spanish Armada begin?
Okay, so it happens in 1588. It sort of has a false start. So it leaves Lisbon on the 28th of May 1588, but it's delayed by storms and repairs. So it only sets sail for England on the 21st of July. So the Spanish Armada begins on the 21st of July after having a full start on the 28th of May. If you want to only remember one date, remember the 21st of July, 1588. But if you want extra marks, then you can put in the first date as well.
I don't think we have any more questions, so it's probably a good place to leave it here. Thanks everyone for joining us again for history, and hope you have a lovely evening, and we'll see you back again tomorrow for a full day of sessions with the My Tutor online school. Thank you, bye.
Bye.